The air was thick with tension on the alien planet of Thrixis. The sky glowed in strange colors, a mix of deep purples and soft greens, and the floating islands hovered silently above the surface. Below, the Council of Elders gathered, their long, slender limbs folded neatly as they observed the ceremony about to unfold. In the center of the ceremonial platform lay a small basket. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, was a newborn human baby. The council murmured among themselves. "It is tradition," one elder whispered, "to offer what we hold most precious to Vrylox, the deadliest dragon of Thrixis. But, a human? Will it survive?" Another elder shook his head. "Humans are fragile. The dragon has destroyed many offerings before. Why would this one be different?" No one spoke of the rumors that had traveled through the settlements, that sometimes Vrylox acted in ways no one could predict. Most believed the dragon only brought death to what was offered. But today the council had no choice. The human baby had been born under unusual stars, and according to prophecy, its life would determine the balance of the planet. Vrylox's lair was carved into the side of a floating mountain. Its black scales reflected the colors of the sky, and the enormous wings blocked sunlight as the dragon moved. The elders brought the basket carefully, each step measured. They did not want to disturb the dragon's mood. The baby cooed softly, unaware of the danger that surrounded it. Its small hands reached for the air, fingers curling instinctively. One elder whispered, "Do not make noise. Let Vrylox see it quietly." The dragon stirred. Its eyes, glowing golden, opened slowly. The ground trembled beneath each careful step as Vrylox approached the basket. The elders held their breath. They had seen this moment countless times, and usually, it ended with a snap of Vrylox's jaws. But this time something felt different. Vrylox lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring. The dragon sniffed the baby, its eyes narrowing. The elders tensed, expecting the worst. But Vrylox did not strike. Instead, it made a low rumble, a sound that vibrated through the air like distant thunder. The dragon extended one claw, enormous and sharp, and gently lifted the basket. The elders gasped. This cannot be," one whispered. "It should be dead." Vrylox carried the basket into the center of the lair, eyes fixed on the baby. The dragon's breath was warm and steady, not threatening. The baby blinked and cooed, reaching out toward the golden eyes above it. Somehow the dragon did not recoil. Instead, it lowered its massive head closer, tilting it to examine the small human carefully. The elders looked at one another, unsure what to do. Some wanted to retreat. Others wanted to intervene. But the dragon made it clear. No one should touch the human. The dragon was claiming the baby. Vrylox rumbled again, soft and low, a sound almost like curiosity. The baby reached out and touched one of the dragon's claws, and to the shock of everyone present, the dragon did not pull away. Instead, it coiled slightly around the basket, keeping it safe in its massive limbs. "This is impossible," one elder muttered. "It should have been destroyed by now." Vrylox's eyes seemed to glow brighter. The dragon shifted slightly, adjusting the basket so the baby was comfortable. Then, carefully, the dragon made a soft sound that almost resembled a hum. The baby cooed again, happy with the warmth and safety. The elders whispered among themselves. "It is protecting the human." "Why?" Another elder shook his head. "We do not know. Perhaps the prophecy is true. Perhaps this human is special." Hours passed. The dragon did not eat or destroy the offering. It simply watched over the baby, letting the small human touch its scales, hear its soft rumble, and feel the warmth of its massive body. The elders could not understand it. How could the deadliest dragon, feared by all of Thrixis, behave this way? Finally, one brave elder approached. "Vrylox," he said carefully, "why are you not?" He stopped, realizing the dragon's golden eyes were on him. The dragon's stare was not angry, not threatening. It was calm, almost thoughtful. The elder swallowed. We do not understand." Vrylox made a sound that echoed in the cavern, low and melodic. It gently nudged the baby, who laughed softly. The sound of the laughter seemed to please the dragon. It shifted again, coiling protectively around the small human. "This is extraordinary," the elder whispered to himself. "The dragon has accepted the human. It will raise it." The other elders looked in shock. Raising a human was unheard of. Some feared it could bring danger. Others saw it as a miracle. For the baby, the world was safe and warm. The dragon's scales reflected soft light, and the air was filled with gentle rumbling sounds that the baby seemed to enjoy. No one could predict what would happen next, but something had already changed. The bond between human and dragon had begun. Vrylox stepped carefully, carrying the baby deeper into the lair. The elders followed, keeping a safe distance. The dragon lowered the baby into a soft nest of leaves and soft moss that it had prepared. It watched closely as the baby rolled and giggled, reaching out for the dragon's claws. The elders whispered nervously. "It is nurturing it. The deadliest dragon is nurturing the human." Vrylox responded with a low rumble of approval, a sound that was almost musical. The baby laughed again, striking a small hand against the dragon's smooth, dark scales. The dragon's eyes softened. The elders realized that this was no ordinary event. "This human will survive," one elder said softly. "And the dragon will teach it. Perhaps even love it." No one spoke further. They could only watch as Vrylox adjusted its enormous body around the nest, ensuring the human was safe, comfortable, and warm. The dragon's rumbling continued, steady and calming, as though it had always known it was meant to protect this child. For the first time, the council understood something important. This was no ordinary human. And Vrylox was no ordinary dragon. Together, they were beginning a bond that might change the course of the planet. As night fell over the floating islands of Thrixis, the stars above seemed to shine brighter. The elders left quietly, unwilling to disturb the unusual pairing. And in the heart of the dragon's lair, a tiny human baby slept soundly, wrapped in soft cloth, with the deadliest dragon of Thrixis curled protectively around it. The prophecy had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The lair of Vrylox was no ordinary place. Its walls glowed faintly with bioluminescent crystals, and the air smelled faintly of minerals and warmth. The floating islands outside the lair drifted slowly, casting shadows that danced across the dragon's massive body. In the middle of it all, the human baby slept peacefully, cradled by Vrylox's enormous claws. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The Council of Elders watched from a distance, unable to understand what was happening inside the lair. Vrylox never harmed the human. Instead, the dragon protected, nurtured, and even guided the small child. The baby, named Kalen by the elders, grew quickly. He learned to crawl along the soft moss in the nest, reaching for the dragon's smooth scales. Vrylox would rumble softly whenever Kalen laughed or babbled, and sometimes the dragon's warm breath would wash over the baby, comforting him. At first the elders worried. "The human is fragile," one whispered. "What if it falls or gets hurt?" But Vrylox was careful. Every movement was measured, every claw placed in a way that ensured Kalen's safety. Slowly the elders began to understand. The dragon was not just guarding the human, it was teaching him. As Kalen grew, he began to make small sounds that Vrylox seemed to understand. The dragon would respond with gentle rumbles or soft movements, guiding the child without force. Kalen learned to respond to the dragon's subtle signals. When Vrylox nudged him toward a crystal, Kalen would explore it carefully. When the dragon lowered a claw, he would step back, learning patience and respect. The first time Kalen tried to stand, Vrylox supported him with a gentle nudge from its tail. The baby wobbled but did not fall. The dragon rumbled proudly and Kalen laughed. It was a small moment, but it showed the depth of the bond forming between them. Outside the lair, the council debated. "Is this safe?" one elder asked. "The deadliest dragon is supposed to destroy, not raise. What if it changes Kalen in ways we cannot predict?" Another elder shook her head. "It is already changing him, but perhaps for the better. Look at how he is learning. The dragon is not just keeping him alive. It is teaching him to understand the world, to survive, and to think." Vrylox and Kalen spent days exploring the lair. The dragon showed him the glowing crystals and the small tunnels that ran beneath the mountains. Kalen learned to listen to the sounds of the lair, the subtle shifts in rocks, the soft hum of energy from the crystals, and the rumble of the dragon's heartbeat. Every sound taught him awareness. One day, Kalen reached for a small crystal that glowed with a soft green light. The crystal began to tilt dangerously. Vrylox's tail moved swiftly, steadying it before it could fall. Kalen clapped his small hands and laughed. The dragon rumbled, a sound like a gentle laugh. "You are learning quickly," the dragon seemed to say. Kalen also began learning communication. The dragon's eyes, body movements, and soft rumbling became a language he could understand. When Vrylox tilted its head, Kalen would follow its gaze. When the dragon lowered a claw, he learned caution. Slowly they developed a rhythm together, an unspoken understanding that made them a team. The first time Kalen ventured to the edge of the nest, Vrylox stayed close. The dragon's massive wings blocked the sharp sunlight and softened the wind. Kalen held onto a small rock, testing his balance. Vrylox adjusted its body to create a safe space. You are ready to explore, the dragon seemed to say without words. Kalen's first exploration of the lair was cautious. He crawled along the soft moss, touching the walls and looking at the glowing crystals. Vrylox followed silently, providing warmth, protection, and guidance. Every step Kalen took was measured. Every movement of the dragon was precise. They were learning together. At night, Vrylox would curl around Kalen, providing warmth and safety. The child slept soundly against the dragon's scales, the hum of Vrylox's rumble lulling him to sleep. It was a strange sight for any observer, the deadliest dragon, feared by all, acting like a guardian and teacher to a fragile human child. Months turned into years. Kalen learned to walk and run carefully within the lair. He learned to recognize the different sounds of the tunnels, the patterns of light from the crystals, and even the subtle signals from the dragon's body. He was growing stronger, smarter, and more confident every day. The council continued to watch. Some were still fearful, but others began to see the potential. "This human is extraordinary," one elder whispered. "It is learning from the dragon, and the dragon, it is teaching patience, awareness, and courage. No human has ever been raised this way." One afternoon, Kalen climbed to a high ledge inside the lair. Vrylox moved carefully, blocking the ledge's edge with its tail. Kalen laughed and pointed toward the glowing sky outside the floating islands. The dragon rumbled in response, a sound of approval. Kalen was learning more than survival. He was learning understanding, respect, and courage. He was learning that strength was not only in claws or size, but in intelligence, awareness, and patience. And Vrylox was showing him every day, silently, without force, without fear. By the time Kalen reached the age of 5, he was no longer just a human baby. He was a child who could navigate the lair with confidence. He could read the dragon's signals, understand the environment, and even begin to anticipate danger. The bond between them was unbreakable. The elders began to accept what they had feared. This was not a mistake. This was not a failure of tradition. Vrylox was not destroying the human. It was raising him. And in doing so, the dragon was creating something new, something that could change the balance of the planet. Kalen looked up at the massive dragon one evening as the floating islands glowed in the sunset. "I'm learning," he said softly. His voice was small but firm. Vrylox rumbled in response, a deep sound that filled the lair. It was a sound of pride, of understanding, and of agreement. The human was learning, yes, but the dragon was learning too. Together, they were creating a partnership that no one could have imagined. And far below, the Council of Elders watched quietly, realizing that the deadliest dragon of Thrixis had become the unexpected guardian of a human child. A bond had formed that would shape the future of humans, dragons, and the planet itself. The prophecy had begun to unfold. Kalen, the human child, and Vrylox, the deadliest dragon, were no longer just two beings sharing a space. They were partners. They were teacher and student, guardian and protected. And together, they were unstoppable in ways no one had yet seen. Kalen was growing quickly. His small human hands had become capable and strong, and his mind was sharp beyond what the elders had imagined. Each day in Vrylox's lair was a lesson, not one of fear but of understanding, respect, and awareness. The dragon moved around him like a shadow, teaching him without words, guiding him through the maze of tunnels, glowing crystals, and floating platforms that made up the lair. At first, Kalen had only learned to survive, to move safely and avoid danger. But now he began to understand more. He began to learn about the world around him. Vrylox would guide him toward the crystals that hummed with energy, and Kalen would watch closely, learning patterns and behaviors. Sometimes the dragon would flick a tail or lift a claw, and Kalen learned to notice the smallest gestures. One morning, Kalen and Vrylox ventured to the outer cliffs of the floating mountain. From there, the entire valley below was visible. Streams of light glimmered in the rivers, and creatures of all sizes moved across the fields. Kalen gasped. He had never seen the world like this before. "Look," Vrylox rumbled softly, tilting its head toward a group of alien herbivores grazing near the river. Kalen studied them, noticing how they moved in patterns, how they avoided dangerous terrain, and how they communicated with soft sounds. "They talk," Kalen whispered, pointing. Vrylox rumbled again, and Kalen understood that the dragon was teaching him observation. The child realized that intelligence was not only in speech, it was in understanding patterns, predicting behavior, and learning from the environment. Over the next weeks, Kalen learned more than he could from any human teacher. He began to recognize alien languages, not by speaking but by listening. The faint sounds of clicks, hums, and whistles carried meaning, and with Vrylox's guidance, Kalen learned to respond in his own way, using gestures and simple sounds. One afternoon, Kalen found a small injured creature trapped in a rock crevice. It was a fragile being, quivering and unable to move. Kalen froze, unsure what to do. Vrylox approached slowly, watching. The dragon nudged the creature gently with a claw, showing Kalen how to help without harming it. Kalen understood. He carefully lifted the creature and carried it to a safer spot, imitating the dragon's calm movements. The creature relaxed and eventually scurried away. Kalen turned to Vrylox, smiling. The dragon's eyes glowed warmly, rumbling in approval. "You learned well," it seemed to say. The elders below the floating islands began to notice Kalen's growth. Reports came in of a human child who moved like a native of Thrixis, who understood the world in ways humans never could. Some elders were worried, fearing what such intelligence could mean. Others were intrigued, seeing the potential for humans and dragons to cooperate. As Kalen grew older, he began exploring further. Vrylox taught him how to glide safely from ledges using the dragon's wings as shields, how to navigate the floating currents of air, and how to recognize subtle signs of danger. Kalen learned quickly, combining human curiosity with the dragon's careful guidance. The child also began to learn about dragon history and culture. Vrylox showed him old markings on the walls of the lair, symbols that told stories of dragons, their past conflicts, their alliances, and their traditions. Kalen traced the lines with small fingers, asking questions in simple sounds. The dragon responded with low rumbles, explaining through gesture and vibration. One evening, Vrylox led Kalen to a hidden chamber deep within the lair. The walls glowed with images of dragons and their achievements. "These are our ancestors," the dragon seemed to say. Kalen studied them, realizing that dragons had long histories just like humans. He began to see connections between the two species. Strength, loyalty, intelligence, and courage were values both shared. Word of Kalen's abilities spread. Humans from nearby settlements began to visit the floating mountain cautiously. They watched as Kalen climbed, ran, and communicated with the dragon. Some were fearful, but many were amazed. Here was a human child who had learned to live in harmony with a dragon, to understand a world they had never imagined. Aliens too were curious. Delegates from neighboring planets came to observe the child. They saw him imitate Vrylox's movements, navigate dangerous cliffs, and communicate with creatures of the wild. They whispered among themselves, "This human, it is not like others." Kalen began to realize that he had a role to play. He could bridge worlds, understand species, and help them cooperate. And he learned from Vrylox that strength was not only in size or power, it was in patience, thought, and kindness. One day, a young alien approached the lair. It had heard of Kalen and wanted to see him. Kalen greeted it cautiously. Vrylox watched nearby, protective but calm. Kalen communicated with the alien through gestures and sounds he had learned, helping it understand the tunnels and the crystals. The alien smiled and soon more came. Kalen was teaching others now. He explained how to move safely, how to read the subtle signs of the environment, and how to respect the dragons. Vrylox observed silently, pleased. The human had learned more than survival, he had learned leadership. Even Vrylox changed. The dragon had been feared, isolated, and deadly. But with Kalen it learned patience, care, and trust. The bond between them was no longer just teacher and student. They were partners, exploring, learning, and teaching together. By the time Kalen was 10, he could move through the lair confidently, communicate with both humans and aliens, and understand the world in ways that no human had before. The dragon had raised him not just to survive, but to think, to observe, and to understand. The elders of Thrixis finally accepted what they had once feared. Kalen was extraordinary. The human and the dragon together represented a new possibility, a future where species could cooperate, learn from each other, and achieve more than anyone could alone. Vrylox and Kalen sat one evening on a high ledge, overlooking the floating islands. The sun was setting, casting orange and purple hues across the sky. Kalen reached out and touched the dragon's smooth scales. "You taught me everything," Kalen said softly. The dragon rumbled deeply, a sound that spoke of pride, approval, and something deeper, a bond that went beyond words. Together they had learned from two worlds, the cunning and curiosity of humans and the strength and wisdom of dragons. And together, they were preparing for the challenges that lay beyond the floating islands of Thrixis. The prophecy was moving forward. Kalen, the human child, and Vrylox, the deadliest dragon, were no longer separate beings. They were a team, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of what cooperation and understanding could achieve. The galaxy would soon see what two unlikely allies, a human and a dragon, could accomplish when they learned from each other. The sun rose slowly over the floating islands of Thrixis, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. Kalen stood at the edge of the lair, watching the morning light reflect off the glowing crystals. He was now 12 years old, taller and stronger than before, and his mind was sharp, full of the lessons Vrylox had taught him. The dragon lay coiled behind him, its massive head resting on its claws, eyes half closed but alert. Life had been peaceful for many years, but peace was fragile. From the outer cliffs, dark clouds began to gather, swirling unnaturally. The wind picked up, stronger than usual, carrying the faint sounds of distant roars and crashing rocks. Kalen felt it before he saw it. The air was tense, charged with danger. "Vrylox," he whispered, his voice steady though his heart beat faster. The dragon's eyes opened wide, glowing gold as it rose to its full height. The massive wings stretched out, casting a shadow over the ledge, and the lair trembled slightly beneath its claws. The clouds moved faster, descending on the floating islands. Kalen realized what was happening: storm winds, rocks breaking loose, and unstable floating platforms. The settlements below were in danger. Humans and aliens might be hurt if the storm reached them. "We have to help," Kalen said firmly. Vrylox rumbled, a low sound that shook the ground as if agreeing. Together they would act. Kalen led the way, carefully following the dragon down the twisting paths of the mountain. Vrylox moved with precision, clearing debris and stabilizing loose rocks with its massive claws. Kalen copied the dragon's careful steps, guiding small creatures and warning them of danger. He shouted to anyone he saw in the settlements, helping them move to safer ground. At first, some humans were terrified. They had always feared the dragon, believing it was deadly. But seeing Vrylox working with Kalen to protect them, they hesitated and then followed the child's instructions. Slowly, fear turned to trust. Kalen's calm voice and quick thinking guided the settlers. The storm grew stronger. Rocks began to tumble and the floating islands shook violently. Kalen noticed a group of small alien creatures trapped on a ledge. Without hesitation he signaled to Vrylox. The dragon stretched a massive claw carefully, creating a platform for the creatures to climb onto. Kalen then guided them to safety, his heart pounding but steady. "This is what you taught me," Kalen said quietly, remembering the lessons of patience, observation and courage. "We can do this together." The dragon rumbled proudly, its golden eyes watching Kalen with approval. The child's bravery and quick thinking were impressive, even for a dragon. Vrylox's massive wings beat powerfully, creating strong gusts that redirected falling debris away from the settlers. At one point, a large rock broke free from the cliff above. Kalen shouted a warning, but there was no time for humans or aliens to move. Vrylox reacted instantly, catching the rock with a massive claw and holding it in place until it could be carefully lowered to a safe spot. The dragon's strength and precision amazed everyone watching. Kalen guided the settlers and creatures to a more stable area, giving directions calmly and clearly. He noticed that some young aliens were frightened, and he reached out, offering reassuring gestures he had learned from Vrylox. Slowly their fear faded and they followed him, moving safely under the dragon's watchful eye. Hours passed and the storm began to subside. The floating islands settled back into their positions, the winds calmed, and the glowing crystals of the cliffs illuminated the exhausted but safe settlers. Kalen and Vrylox stood together, surveying the scene. No lives had been lost, and the people were beginning to see what was possible when courage, intelligence, and strength worked together. An elder arrived from the council, awe and respect written on their face. "Kalen. Vrylox, you saved them," the elder said, voice trembling. "I never imagined that a human and a dragon could work like this." Kalen smiled, brushing dust from his clothes. "We didn't do it alone. We learned together. That's why we could help." The elder nodded slowly, understanding. "This is the start of something new. You have shown that fear is not always the answer, and that cooperation can achieve what strength alone cannot." Vrylox rumbled softly, lowering its massive body to allow Kalen to climb onto its back. The dragon's wings stretched out, creating a gentle breeze, and together, they moved along the cliffs, checking on the floating islands and settlements. Kalen's small hands rested on the dragon's smooth scales, feeling the power beneath him, the steady heartbeat of a guardian who had taught him everything he knew. The settlers and aliens began to gather, looking at Kalen with curiosity and gratitude. He waved to them, using the gestures Vrylox had taught him, and they responded with smiles and nods. The child and the dragon had shown them a new way, one where humans and dragons could work together, protect each other, and face challenges as a team. As the sun set over Thrixis, the sky glowing with orange and purple hues, Kalen and Vrylox rested on a high ledge. Kalen looked out at the floating islands below, his mind racing with what he had learned. "We can do so much more," he said softly. "We can teach them. We can help them understand." Vrylox rumbled deeply, a sound of agreement, pride, and encouragement. The dragon had always been feared, but now it had shown the world that strength could be gentle, guidance could be powerful, and courage could come from the smallest of beings. That night, Kalen fell asleep against the dragon's scales, safe and warm. He dreamed of floating islands, glowing rivers, and the creatures he had helped. He dreamed of a world where humans and dragons, humans and aliens, could learn from each other and grow together. And far below, the council watched, realizing that the child raised by the deadliest dragon of Thrixis was no ordinary human. Kalen had faced the storm, guided the settlements, and proved that even in the face of danger, understanding, courage, and cooperation could succeed where fear and violence might fail. The prophecy had advanced another step. Kalen, the human child, and Vrylox, the deadliest dragon, had faced their first challenge together, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for the trials yet to come. Together they were not just survivors. They were a symbol of what could be achieved when two worlds learned from each other. And the galaxy would watch, soon enough, as the story of the human child raised by a dragon continued to unfold. The floating islands of Thrixis glowed in the soft light of dawn. Kalen stood on a high ledge, looking down at the settlements, the rivers, and the creatures moving carefully below. At his side, Vrylox shifted its massive wings, stretching and letting out a low rumble that vibrated through the stone. Together they had survived storms, guided settlements, and learned from one another. Now the challenge was greater, they had to unite worlds. Humans, aliens, and dragons had long lived in fear and suspicion of one another. Few had dared to cross species boundaries, and the galaxy was full of divisions. But Kalen understood something others did not. Strength alone did not bring unity, understanding, trust, and courage did. And Vrylox had shown him how. Kalen spoke softly to the dragon. "We need to show them they can work together. They need to see what's possible." The dragon's eyes glowed, a deep golden light that seemed to agree. Together they began to plan. They started with the nearby settlements. Kalen climbed onto Vrylox's back, and the dragon took off into the skies. From above, the humans and aliens could see the massive dragon moving carefully with the child on its back. Instead of fear, a sense of curiosity spread. Kalen waved to them, using gestures he had learned to communicate with both species. Slowly the humans and aliens approached, hesitant but willing to listen. Kalen landed safely, and Vrylox lowered its massive head to allow the settlers to see that the dragon was not a threat. The humans and aliens began to gather, watching as the child spoke to them. He explained in simple words and gestures what he had learned from Vrylox, the importance of awareness, cooperation, and care for one another. At first there was skepticism. Many could not believe that a human could speak so confidently to dragons, or that a dragon could act gently toward humans. But Kalen showed them. He led the settlers in small exercises, guiding them along safe paths, teaching them to observe the environment, and helping them understand the dragon's signals. Slowly trust grew. Vrylox demonstrated as well. The dragon moved carefully among the humans and aliens, allowing them to approach, showing them that its strength could be used to protect, not destroy. It picked up heavy debris from previous storms and cleared paths for the settlers, showing cooperation in action. The sight of the deadliest dragon helping instead of threatening was astonishing. Kalen noticed young children among the settlers, frightened and unsure. He approached them gently, showing them how to respect the dragon and the world around them. The dragon lowered its head, letting the children touch its scales under Kalen's guidance. The children laughed, and the tension that had hung over the settlements began to ease. Word spread quickly. Delegates from neighboring planets arrived, curious about the human raised by a dragon. Kalen greeted them with calm gestures and simple words, showing that understanding was more powerful than fear. The delegates watched as humans, aliens, and the dragon worked together, realizing that cooperation was possible. Vrylox helped in other ways too. The dragon moved carefully through dangerous terrain, demonstrating how creatures could work together. Kalen explained what he had learned from the dragon about reading the environment, predicting movement, and understanding patterns. Slowly the settlers and delegates began to mimic these actions, learning from the child and the dragon alike. One day Kalen led a group to a floating cliff that had been unstable for years. The settlers had avoided it, believing it too dangerous. But with Vrylox's guidance they moved carefully, placing stones and supporting each other. When the work was done the cliff was safe, a symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation. As the weeks passed, Kalen and Vrylox worked tirelessly. They taught humans and aliens to communicate using gestures and simple sounds, to observe their surroundings and to act together. Slowly, a new culture began to form, a culture of respect, awareness and partnership across species. The elders of Thrixis watched from afar, amazed. What had begun as a human child raised by a dragon had grown into a force for unity. Kalen's courage, intelligence and patience, combined with Vrylox's strength and guidance, were creating something unprecedented. One evening, as the sun set and the floating islands glowed with orange and purple light, Kalen climbed onto Vrylox's back. Together, they flew over the settlements, observing humans and aliens working side by side, clearing debris, sharing food, and communicating with gestures and sounds they had learned from Kalen. The scene filled Kalen's heart with pride. "We did it," he whispered, resting against the dragon's smooth scales. "They are learning to work together. They are learning to trust." Vrylox rumbled deeply, a sound of pride and satisfaction. The dragon had once been feared, alone and deadly. Now, it was part of a partnership that could change the galaxy. Kalen's thoughts turned to the future. There would be challenges, conflicts, and new dangers. But he knew that humans, aliens, and dragons could face them together. With understanding, patience, and courage, they could achieve what no single species could. The child raised by the deadliest dragon had become more than a survivor. He was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what could be achieved when strength was combined with intelligence and care. Vrylox, once a feared creature, had become a teacher, a guardian, and a partner in this new era. The settlers cheered as Kalen landed, waving to them and smiling. He had earned their trust, their respect, and their hope. Vrylox lowered its head, and the people approached carefully, touching the dragon's scales and feeling the warmth and safety it offered. From that day on, humans and aliens began to travel more freely, guided by Kalen and protected by Vrylox. They explored the floating islands together, learning from each other, building settlements, and helping creatures in need. The lessons of courage, awareness, and cooperation spread throughout the galaxy. Kalen looked out over the islands, the rivers, and the settlements, thinking of everything they had accomplished. "We can do even more," he said softly to Vrylox. The dragon rumbled, and Kalen knew they would. Together they had faced storms, danger, and fear. Together they had taught others to cooperate. And together, they had created a bond that would endure across species, generations, and worlds. The prophecy had come true, not because of power alone but because of courage, intelligence, and the willingness to learn from one another. Kalen, the human child, and Vrylox, the deadliest dragon, had forged a new path. The galaxy would remember the human and the dragon who had shown that understanding could conquer fear, and that unity could overcome any challenge. The future was no longer divided. Humans, aliens, and dragons had begun a new era, one of trust, respect, and partnership. And at the center of it all stood a small human child and the dragon who had raised him, teaching the galaxy that bonds between worlds could be stronger than anything else. And as the stars appeared in the night sky above the floating islands, Kalen rested against Vrylox, dreaming of the worlds they would explore together, the challenges they would face, and the new bonds they would build. Together they had not only survived, they had changed the galaxy forever.